Thank you very much for joining us today. It's this map is really sobering. You look at, what's probably 50% of all the forest in British Columbia affected, or is that the right order of magnitude?
Yeah, it's about 50%.
And so when we talk about just British Columbia for a second, how much of the forest would be replanted in a normal year in British Columbia?
I would have to double check the numbers. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, so would you have any sense of how much the forest is harvested every year?
Let me just double check. No, I can't speak to that.
Is it even 1%?
Probably more than that. Yeah, they certainly do try to replant after they've harvested an area.
No, but I mean, is the amount of forest that's harvested even 1% of the British Columbia forest?
Typically, you mean? I'm not sure. I don't know what the exact percentage is.
Because I'm just looking at this map and I'm thinking, why are we doing anything? This is a natural species. It's a cyclical thing. If you look south of the border in the U.S., they've had these things every couple of decades for eons. They still have forests. What do the forests in the U.S. look like that have a comparable population, a comparable climate to what we have now would have had a comparable climate 100 years ago?
Although we have had these cycles, we have had these periodic, sort of outbreaks, there's been nothing at the scale of what we've seen in BC and now in Alberta. So just the magnitude of the outbreak is substantial. And obviously, when 50% or more of the merchantable pine is taken out by the beetle, that obviously has a severe economic consequences. And the risk is that,
but sir, it's not going away. I mean, this insect exists. It's there. It's attacked it. These trees are. It's going to be a new ecology after this. Why are we trying to manage an ecology that we don't even know what it's meant to look like? Because climate change is happening and nature will take its course. I'm trying to understand why we should not just, in some sense, just leave well enough alone, because there's no way we can spend enough money to treat even a significant or a measurable portion of this vast area that we've talked about. So why don't we just leave well enough alone?
So you're right that we certainly can't go in and treat with all the massive infestation in BC and that western part of Alberta, and that's where I said in those regions.
But even along that zone, I'm looking at that line. I mean, that line is thousands of kilometers long. The red line. And not only that, it's not like you can stop it because the climate is changing. The planet is warming. These moths are coming, and these beetles are coming. I'm trying to figure out why we're not just, why are we trying to manage a crisis that's unmanageable? Why isn't it better just to say, this is what we see the forest looking like when this crisis has passed? And why don't we try to do a few things that'll encourage the forest to get to that state a little sooner so we can deal with the fire problem?
So in part, because we can have a measurable impact, certainly along that leading edge. We can, and we have been slowing the spread of the beetle eastward.
But I mean, it's going to spread. I mean, is there any thought that we can stop it, or are we going because you said you need minus 35 temperatures? Is there some line in the sand here where it can't cross?
Well, obviously, weather and climate will obviously play a big role in this. But even in the last few years, that leading edge, the spread has slowed a little bit, in part due to climatic conditions. So it is possible, and some recent work coming out of Alan Carroll's lab and his group suggests that if the densities are low enough right now along that leading edge, which they certainly are, we may be able to suppress those populations below the point where the outbreak can continue. So we may be able to. It
just seems to me from, the fire, there's no free lunch in this. We suppress the fire, we allow the cheese to age, we get more bugs. The more bugs, and then, we in the old growth trees, and then they all die, and there's a forest fire. I just sort of look at this, say, we're just sort of suppressing the bugs so that the age of the trees gets higher, so we're even more likely to have more bugs. It just seems like the more we try to interfere with this process, we create a positive feedback loop that makes it more likely. And I'm just wondering if, there's a lot of guilt associated with this, but just because we're causing climate change and we're creating this horrible problem doesn't mean that trying to address it the way we're addressing it is a good idea. It just seems that we're going to head to a new climate state, and maybe we should just be trying to plan and manage towards the new climate state than trying to protect something which simply doesn't exist. We're already 1.5 degrees beyond the climate that caused this forest to exist in the first place. I'm trying to wrap my head around why we're trying to protect a past that doesn't exist.
So in part, yes, we are trying to protect the forests, keep them there. They obviously are a valuable resource for a large number of reasons. But we are having meaningful impacts here. We are able to manage the forests, and the goal here, I'll just reiterate that the goal is about long-term, sustainable, resilient forests. And so that doesn't mean that we're going to just replant and then get all of these, trees back up to being uniform, mature stands. We want to have a variety. We want to have that variation in the forest to keep these landscapes healthy.
But it wouldn't nature just do that itself? Like if a forest fire comes in and wipes this out, then you just, over time, the seeds will be dispersed by the wind and the bugs and the birds, and a forest will reemerge, or no?
But there's no guarantee that forests will reemerge. So we do know that with shifts in the climate, with shifts in soil moisture, that some, like these pine stands here, after large fire events, after large disturbances by mountain pine beetle or other forest insects, and with the changes in the climate, they may not come back as pine stands.
Sure, but maybe they're not supposed to come back as pine stands, is the point I'm trying to make. Like, what types of stands do they have in Northern California? Because the Northern California climate of 100 years ago was more like the climate of southern British Columbia now. So what do their forests look like, and isn't that what we should be managing towards? It seems like, again, I don't expect pine stands to come back here because the mountain pine beetle will just eat them all.
So it won't necessarily do that if we take action. And certainly the types of stands that we've got that they have in the U.S., in California, and in Colorado, where there's more ponderosa pine, those are a very different type of forest stand. And all of those stands are still fire-driven ecosystems. Fire still plays a huge role on the landscape. So even if you said, let's let the beetles have their way with the trees, and they're going to march their way through, you've still got this issue that the forests aren't in a state where they're going to be long-term resilient, not just to insect disturbance, but also to fire and the change in the fire regimes that is coming and that's already underway. And we need to do something because we can't afford to
I'm not sure what we can do looking at this map. There's tens of thousands of square kilometers.